Welcome to Access, thanks to Crypto.com. Matthew, Lloyd and Damian Barrett with you coming out of round 9, where Lordo, the Giants, got their season back on track.
Huge win for them in Geelong, their 5th in a row down there. And I'm big on the psychology of sport in a long season. I love what Craig McRae and Sam Mitchell does to tap into their players and get the best out of them. We'll talk about that this morning.
As Adam Kingsley did for the Giants yesterday at the Cattery, Lordo, it was an old-school Giants victory. The ball movement was back to its almost best.
It was, Damo, and it's a tough place to play, but they play this ground so well. It's a skinny ground, and they didn't get caught on the wings or the boundaries. So they decided, we're going to take you on, Geelong. We're going to challenge your defence. No Jack Henry, no Tom Stewart. We think you're vulnerable down there. And they took them on. This ball movement allowed for Jesse Hogan to get time, space, and they got it out the back with pizza play like this where they're all at sea because of that ball movement further down the ground. So Tom Green, what a game he played, Damo.
He had one of his best games of the year, as Finn Callaghan did as well. Now, they've both had good seasons, but I think they lifted their games to the next level yesterday. And you're right, the man on the end of that sequence of events there was the man who ultimately won that game. His name's Jesse Hogan, and there he is there lining up for one of his 7 goals. We'll take a focus on him in a moment. But you mentioned, Lordo, the lack of personnel at the Cats. You mentioned Henry, you mentioned Stewart. They also were without Lawson Humphreys. They were without Kolajasny, and people can have their views about Kolajasny, but when he's fit and ready, he does play under Chris Scott. They're also without Reece Stanley, and I raise that because Mark Blicavs then had to ruck, and it left them exposed down back. And Sam De Koning, while he's a premiership player in 2022, Lordo, he does need better players around him, and he was exposed yesterday, as was O'Sullivan.
Yeah, but the Giants will say they had injuries too, so they've got a number of class players out, and Daniels and Kelly, and Stringer does a hamstring halfway through the game. So well done, Jesse Hogan, 22 disposals. He's just a running machine, 9 marks, 7 goals. He's the best forward in the comp, and he reminded everyone yesterday.
It is a reminder because he is the All-Australian and the Coleman medalist of last year. Missed 3 matches this year, but has now kicked 25 goals from the 6 games.
That's right, and I think he's had some misses this year in terms of games, and he's up and about. I'm pleased for the Giants because they are a team that I want to play in September because they're good enough to be there, but for whatever reason, they've just been off this year.
Now, with all of that, and there were excuses for the Cats, they nearly pulled the victory off, Lordo, and it was their own mistakes in the game that actually led to that happening.
Yeah, we want to take a look at some un-Geelong-like. So first of all, this Dangerfield. So well done to intercept, but they're a point up. This would have been 7 up.
Go for goal?
Oh, no, just hit your target, and then he overruns the ball. So not like Dangerfield to overrun. Finn Callaghan was unbelievable. You just saw him get involved with the handball. But Geelong, they shouldn't let him out of this. But don't get mesmerised by the ball. Mitch Duncan been around long enough. Misses that tackle. Brad Close has to keep him corridor, boundary side. He gets around into the corridor there, and then they're out. And then they're out. But this is poor by Jeremy Cameron. This is a kid playing his first game of football. And that's just a soft, weak effort from Jeremy. He had to hold him in, and then next minute it goes down.
And De Koning has a moment here too, right? He needs to spike that, doesn't he?
Yeah, in through the points, and then not sure what he's doing, Guthrie. He just tracks Toby Green, doesn't actually go at the tackler, at the player with the ball, and then Mark Blicavs. That's one you should be kicking.
He has to kick that. I know there's fatigue at that stage, but he has to kick that. And then I'm not sure what Close was doing with his option there. Sorry, Myers.
Maybe that's what danger attracts, where the champion players attract the ball, but they'd have to go to the top of the square. So made so many mistakes, missed heaps of set shots. Giants get the win. They jumped them early, but that's one that they'll rue because they're losing a few games now, the Cats.
Well, 8 games out of the 9 were decided by 15 points or less, and one of the 8 games ended in a draw, that being North Melbourne versus Brisbane Lions in Hobart. And while I feel you're going to take the positive aspect and outlook on this particular performance, I am just also continuing, I suppose, to criticise this football club, the Roos, because they had a massive chance yesterday. They had a massive chance the week before against Essendon. They failed to take those chances, and I'm not sure they know what to do when the moments are at their most pressurised, as they were yesterday.
How can't you take a positive out of the fact that this is one of the team that's won 7 or 8 games in years and years, and they go toe-to-toe with a premiership side.
They didn't win, Lordo, and last time I checked, it is a win-loss game, and they just don't win. They've had 1 win to this point of this season. That was against Melbourne back in round 2.
But I believe they were so much better, and yes, it's not a win, but they can walk away, Alistair Clarkson, and say, you know what, guys, if you play this way, you can go all day long against the premiership side, and we just made a few little errors which cost us, and this was the big one for me late in the game, Damo. So I'd walk in there and say, we'll beat Richmond next week if we play this way.
So Constanti taking the ball here?
Constanti takes the ball. So he either blocks or he gives it, and you've got all the space to get out the back. So it's just a moment of madness where he didn't think through, take the play, and they should have scored at least in that last.
And there was a Skillerby prior to that, wasn't there, where Cherry just missed Simpkin on a handball, and it wasn't quite up to it.
No, it wasn't. And what I also liked about North is they were 20 points down in that game, half-time. Could either have rolled over, they didn't. So I think a win maybe next week against the Tigers is around the corner for North.
You're calling it?
Yeah, I think they win that game,
North Focus here today, Lordo, on the Crypto.com bold call of the round. Now, just before I set it up, we both agreed Maxi Gawn is still on track by some distance to be an 8-time All-Australian ruck at the end of the year.
Oh, he's a mile in front of them.
So that's a given?
Yes.
All right, well, we've got the heir apparent, Lordo. The heir apparent is officially Tristan Cherry, in my eyes anyway. I feel he's had a really good 3 weeks, Lordo. He carried a hamstring at the early stages of this season, but what he did yesterday against Oscar McInerney and Darcy Fort, he also had a massive game the previous week against Essendon, and he basically saw Jordan Sweet the previous week find himself out of the Port Adelaide team after what he did to him. I feel he's on the back of what he did in 2024, where he was in the squad and in discussions for that role. I feel he's backed it up, and now that he's over that hamstring complaint, he is number 2.
I've got him at 4, so he's a very good player, but I've got De Koning ahead of him, who mauled him on that Good Friday game, and also got Darcy Cameron as a player who has more value for what he does.
And Lloyd Meek, I think, is in that conversation as well. Lotto, some teams can't win, like North Melbourne, and some have now got 3. I'm referring to the Tigers out of the 9 games they've played. Now, the most recent of those games, Lotto, was against the team that is yet to win a game, that being West Coast, but they just find a way to win. They've beaten Carlton, Gold Coast, and now West Coast, and there is a lot to like about what they are doing, including what you're about to see, a great season highlight tackle from Tom Brown. Yeah,
it's fantastic, and they're getting reward for effort. 3 wins in the space of 9 rounds. That is over and above what they could have hoped for with the players that left them at the end of the year, and they're playing with enthusiasm, excitement. They take the game on. They're not trying to play safe. They're not trying to just defend games, and they got the result. This was an arm wrestle of a game, so the other 2 were shocks. They came in as favourites, and they were still able to go on and win this game.
It's a good point. There's a pressure attached to that because they were a very short price favourite in this game, and I thought Harley Reid was better yesterday. It wasn't his best game in the 2 seasons he's been in the system, and this is the moment to which I refer, where Gross takes the ball. I don't know why he's taking a bounce there, Lordo, but it allows Tom Brown to swoop. And look, when you celebrate victories and moments within victories, and even moments within seasons when you are rebuilding the way Richmond is, it's a big one.
Yeah, and you see McQualter, he's just shattered there. I saw him more animated. He jumped up to see him in the box after the game. He was shattered with that last moment because you need some reward. He's about to talk about the little wins, but you need a big win at some point because it's hard to keep your players up when you continually lose.
It's hard to keep himself up too, given he's now 9 matches into his career without a win. It's the same number that Damien Hardwick had before he won his first game way back as Tigers coach, but post-match, Andrew McQualter just trying to find those positives.
We're not looking for a short-term fix here. We're trying to build a way of playing and the behaviours that we think will win for a long period of time. So there's some little wins we're having along the way. We're judged by win-loss, I understand that, but we're getting a lot of experience that will help these guys, particularly our younger players, for a long period of time. So we'll just keep looking into that and find our little areas where we're having some success in and hopefully singing the songs not far around the corner.
Onto the Showdown, Lordo, this one being the 57th Showdown. They just continually produce epics, these 2 clubs, Port Adelaide and Adelaide, and they did so again on Saturday night. And the big names stood up when they needed to. Isaac Rankin having a very sublime game. Yeah,
they were 28 all going into the game, unbelievably. After 56 Showdowns, this was the 57th, as you just touched on. And I thought they were going to blow them away in the last quarter. The Adelaide Crows threw their class, but Port just wouldn't go away. I loved it. And that's what you want to see from Port.
And you love Jason Horne-Francis taking this moment, but equally you love what's at the end of it from an Adelaide Crows perspective.
Yeah, Mark Keane, unbelievable courage. It was a great game, one of the best games I've seen this year. An arm wrestle, Port Adelaide took it to them. Now they've got to find that consistency, Port, not just be up and down through emotion. They've got to find that level of performance because that will win them a lot of games. But Crows, they're a better side, they're a classier side, and they got over the line as good sides do.
I agreed with the Showdown medal voters, Lordo, in giving the title to Connor Rozee out of that game. But other people may have thought Rolly Thilthorpe was the man. 3 goals, but it was just his presence around the ground. And he's putting together some sort of season, given he was really stricken last year for a lot of it with a knee injury. And the presence he's got, Lordo, the ability to mark, but the ability to bring other teammates into the game. 23 goals for him now from his matches.
I think about guys like Tony Lockett, Fraser Gehrig, guys in the AFL who make other AFL footballers look small. And that's what he's doing, Rolly Thilthorpe. So the work he's done on his body, but he's still one of the best runners at the Adelaide Crows. That combination of size, power and endurance makes him unstoppable at the moment.
Yep. Look, I want you to pull apart in a layperson's term way what you're seeing on the screen here when it comes to what the Crows are doing, first or second in so many key metrics, but particular focus, please, on the last two there, the inside 50s per goal and the percentage of goals per inside 50. What that means and why you think this does allow the Crows to stack up from a big picture perspective.
Well, Damo, they have weapons that other teams don't have, and that is they were smashed at the clearance against Port Adelaide. But when you have a forward line of Thilthorpe, Fogarty, Walker, Rankin, Rochelle and Keys, that is as good a six as any forward line in the competition. There's normally some weak links.
There's some excitement there too, isn't there?
All of them can hurt you.
Yeah.
So they are so effective and efficient. And so they don't need a heap of inside 50s to punish you. And that's what they did against Port Adelaide and why they're the number one ranked team going inside 50.
Yep. Now, you wanted to focus off the top of our show on what Sam Mitchell is doing and saying. And we're going to take a look at what Lloyd Meek, his ruckman, said on the Sunday Footy Show yesterday by way of the address at three-quarter time, which ultimately got the job done against Melbourne. There was a 1-point deficit at that stage of the game. It became a 6-goal win.
Yeah, I think Sam's got a funny way of providing new motivations for players and providing a bit of variety when he speaks. So, yeah, I think he came out and said that we were boring him. And then at three-quarter time was a little bit like, this game's pretty hard to coach with how you're playing. So, yeah, be better, basically.
I was frustrated as anyone at three-quarter time. We couldn't get sort of anything going, and the game was a bit of a mess from both sides.
And they got the response that he wanted, Sam Mitchell. And that's what I love about Sam Mitchell. Even how he brought in the ex-players, before the Richmond game. Yep. He has an amazing ability to say the right thing at the right time, and his players hang off every word. They are so invested in what he wants. They believe
he's happy to criticise them in certain moments.
He is.
Yep.
So he's built the relationship so well, and he has players round for dinner, and he does all the little things more so than any other coach, I think, with what he does to build that connection, and they got a response. So to challenge his players and say, you're boring me, we're falling into Melbourne, it's become a scrap, we're better than them, but it's become such a scrap. I want you to be bold. I want you to take some risks. I want you
that
to
play by Weddle's one of the plays of the year.
And they did that, and they kicked 6 goals, 5 to 1-1 in that all-important last quarter.
Yeah, it is. Now, from one coach you love, and we both love, Lordo, to another in Craig McRae. He is our Coach Speak segment for round 9. And what he says here after the massive win by the Pies against the Dockers to start round 9, it both, I think, underlines the significance of the win, but it equally also highlights a concern.
To win a game with 34 inside 50s, that's not sustainable. But it just shows how good our backs were and then how good our forwards were when we got the territory. We're scoring at such a high rate when we went inside 50, and then our backs were just had an incredible intercept night, Darcy Moore and Howie. So we had to win a different way. And so at that three-quarter time huddle was like, come on, we just got to fight to the last. This is what we do. We fight to the last seconds here.
And even that phrase there, Lordo, we had to win a different way. Sam Mitchell has used the same phrase this year already. They are versatile. They're able to cover losses. There was no McStay or no Myercheck in that forward line. We know that they rested Scotty Pendlebury and Jordan De Goey and Maynard, amongst others. And you then have a situation where Bobby Hill and Jamie Elliott, who kicks 6 goals and is having an extraordinary year himself, had this great communication to cover for all those losses.
Yeah, this is the hardest kick in football, and this is where a lot of teams break down. We often talk about Carlton or we talk about Melbourne, that they can't quite score like they want to. They only had 34 entries, but because they are so connected as a group, they are so role-based and they understand what each other has to do on that forward line, they create opportunities for themselves, and that's what won the game. So as he touched on, they won't win many games getting 34 entries, but they made up for it with how connected they are as a group, and that's a huge win. To rest players and still get the win is amazing. They play the Adelaide Crows at the MCG on Saturday, which will be
a game. Yeah. Now, the connection you referred to there, it's also at play at Essendon. They've now won 5 of their past 6 matches, the most recent one being against the Sydney Swans. They've got their injury issues, which we'll have a focus on in a moment, but they set it up on the back of a third quarter blitz.
Second quarter. Second quarter, where they're up by 39 points at half-time in this game, and they were hungry, they were harder, they were tougher, they were more connected than the Sydney Swans, who have massive issues about them. And what was good was it wasn't a Zach Merritt show. Merritt was held, 19 disposals, 2 goals, still was important, but Nick Martin, McGrath, Reid, Redmond, Durham, Caddy, so they got input from other players, and They play the Western Bulldogs on Saturday night, so that's going to be a tricky matchup when you've got the injuries you're about to show. But I love that they're in the fight and they're fighting hard and winning a little bit of respect at the moment.
They are, absolutely they are. Yeah. Do you give them a hope against the Dogs?
I'm so big on the Dogs and the way the Dogs move the footy. I'm a bit concerned, but as I said, the way they're in every game, I give them half a chance, but the Dogs should be too strong.
And Brett Scott was quite clever how he spoke after the first 2 losses of the year about the club being in a rebuild without using that word, and the performances since, I think, have given great hope. Now, some of these names already, Lordo, the first 2 on the list there are out for the year with season-ending injuries. The others are hopefully going to be coming back at some stage. You can also add, unfortunately for the Bombers, another season-ending injury in Tom Edwards, and Lewis Hayes, unfortunately, went down in his debut match with an ACL on the weekend just gone. So they're doing it through adversity with these past 6 weeks.
They are. ACLs are an absolute killer because the young kid Lewis Hayes won't get back now till the middle of next year. So 3 in 1 season, having a lot of bad luck.
Yep. Now, we always, at this time of the show, try to take some other learnings out of the round just played. What else are you going to take a look at?
The Demons lack polish. So that was their issue against Hawthorn, that they can fight and scrap but don't have the polish of Hawthorn. Sydney Swans, well, they have no depth. So Warner, Heaney, and then you're asking who comes next. That's an issue for them. And the Dogs lost to the Gold Coast Suns, but they're still in my top 4 mix. They didn't lose much from that.
Well, I had the Dockers in a grand final in pre-season predictions, but they're not anywhere near that. And their backline is their biggest problem now. It's not modern and it's too slow, and it's a major problem for them. Jack Silvani's form this year at the Carlton, referencing there with their win against St Kilda at centre-half back, has been extraordinary, and did it on the weekend with a broken hand still.
Yeah, he might play the next 150 games of his career back there.
And as such, the Saints failed to capitalise on what was going on with an injury perspective at the Blues there. That's an opportunity missed for them with where they are at. They should have hit the go button in the third quarter and didn't, when Carlton had Cowan and McGovern already out and problems with Akers and Howling. And then I really want to focus, Lordo, on the Gold Coast Suns. We knew what they did in the off-season by bringing in both Rioli and Noble. They are the most targeted recruits we've seen work unbelievably well to this point of the year.
Yeah, they lost to Brisbane, but they rebounded hard against the Western Bulldogs in a gritty win. So they're tough, they're organised, and they're ready to go now under Hardwick.
Can they win a flag
this
year?
I don't think so, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're there in the last 4. That's how well they're tracking.
Yeah, lock them in for that.
Yeah.
Okay, Crypto.com Gauntlet. You're out, Lordo. You're eliminated. Now, I might still be in on a technicality only. We've gone through the T's and C's, and I tipped Brisbane as my Gauntlet selection. I'm taking the T's and C's going my way, Lordo, so I think I'm still alive.
No, I'm with you. I'm glad you're still in it because I'm gone. I tipped the Cats to beat the Giants on the weekend, so I'm out.
Well, I'm taking the Giants this week to remain alive in the Gauntlet for Crypto.com. Thanks for watching Access. We'll be back next Monday.